Hola, hola.
Hello, hello. Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We are ready to start the event, so I'll be grateful if we could take our seats so we could start with the inauguration. Hello, I would like to invite the panelists to join us. Nadia, Isabel, Ambassador Isabel, Nadia, I invite you to please join us on the table, please. Good morning, good afternoon. We will kickstart the session. First of all, colleagues, I would like to thank all of you for joining us here in this very important session regarding energy transition in Latin America and the Caribbean. My name is Carlos Alvar. I am an energy specialist for UNDP. And well, I have over 15 years of experience in the topics of climate finances and energy finances in the region. And I have worked with several agencies in the United States and with the multilateral banks. So for me, it is a pleasure to be here with you. And well, the topic of the just energy is a topic for everyone, and definitely the topic of just energy transition is important. It's something that in UNDP we believe that is going to transform economies and societies. We need to be attentive because we need to attract millions of investments for Latin America and the Caribbean, but the investments need to be sustainable. So we need to attack not just the mitigation for climate change, but also adaptation for climate change, social topics, gender topics, the topics regarding governance, and financial topics. However, the estimated financial flows for the public sector, we have a trend for prioritization for Africa and Asia. Africa because of access to energy, and Asia because of the topic of mitigation. And this is a great challenge for us as a region. Beyond our international flows for trans-energetic, if we talk about public and private investments in the region at for a global level for clean energy, we need to have an estimate of 1.6 million for 2023, we will be surpassing the investments from fossil fuels. However, here we have another barrier. Another barrier is 90% of this is for developed countries and China. So here we have a great challenge for Latin America and the Caribbean. We need to innovate. We need to innovate, and we need an innovation for public policies and to be able to use the public capitals and to be able to capitalize on credit investments. And we need to see the great challenge we have in the region. And we are thinking of discussing this for leading countries. And with the European Union and the framework Convention for Climate Change, and what are some of the initiatives that are being carried out, and what are some of the barriers and existing opportunities for Latin America and the Caribbean, and also the enabling conditions, the public policies, plans, and public programs that are existent that are supporting the implementation and the climate ambition in the region and energy transitions, but also what are some of the financial instruments that are innovating to bring part of that investment. So this is the idea of the event, and I would like to invite the Secretary for Energy of Panama, Mr. Jorge Rivera, to please give the opening remarks to this event. Dr. Jorge Rivera, he's the National Secretary of Energy for Panama, and ever since, he's the president for the energy and permanent member of the Committee of Rural Electrification Area, and for the National Authority. Mr. Secretary he has a degree in political science with a doctorate from the University of Madrid. He also possesses a master in law, in energy law by the Superior Institute of Energy of Spain. He has over 20 years of experience advising government, private entities for public policies. In his academic basis, we are also adding specialization, globalization for public services, as well as processes for integration between Europe and Latin America, and the University Carlos III of Madrid, as well as a postgraduate degree and an MBA. So I would like to invite the Mr. Secretary Jorge Rivera to give us the opening remarks, please. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Carlos, for these opening remarks. To Madam Ambassador for the European Union in our country, it is always a pleasure to have you join us and share with you different scenarios and keep on pushing just energy transition, and also to the rest of the members of the panel and those of you that are joining us in this process in this week, actually, this climate week. On behalf of the national government, for us it's an extreme pleasure to have the opportunity to share certain opportunities and part of the work that we're carrying out, and we wish to welcome you this afternoon. As Carlos was saying, we need to put a last name on the energy transitions, because it's not just one energy transitions. We have several energy transitions, and we need to be just. And this goes beyond, or at least this is how we are conceptualizing this. We're gonna guide this something that goes beyond a simple switch of energy transitions, energy transition requires several things on how do we utilize energy, on what is the development model behind this process for energy transition, where we have decarbonization, of course, and we also have digitalization, decentralization, and democratization of our energy sectors. In our particular case, for our regional level, and in that sense, on our behalf, the concept of the just transition, it implicates a series of several factors that include the participation of youth, women, and the participation of those people that are linked to the traditional sectors of energy, where we can see that displacement or that change in their realities, but especially in our case, just transition implicates to close the gap for universal access to energy that we still have in our country. We have approximately 4.5% of our populations in the indigenous and mountainous communities that still don't have access to different amounts of energies and electrification. We're talking about over 70,000 families that don't have access to this, and for us it's unacceptable. And for this is something that we are trying to present, and living conditions from the 19th century to the 17th century, and this is why this is our number one priority. Strategy number one is the national strategy for access to energy. So it's very important, this contextualization of what are we doing, what are we talking about, based on what, and in the case of the regions that we mentioned, is not the same to have energy transition in Asia than in Africa, in Europe, China, or the United States. Each and every one of them have a fundamental characteristics, and the fiscal capacities and the governments of the authorities are different, and we need to take them into account for this regional or national presentations. And I hope that today's session points out to have additional information and hopefully some specific actions that will allow us to consolidate this process to move forward. Thank you very much, and once again, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Secretary Jorge. Very important what he just said, because the energy transition is complex. We're talking about access to energy in some concepts, and it's true that in Latin America it's not priority number one, but in Africa it is. But we need to close that last mile of access to very important energy, mainly for the most vulnerable and isolated populations. We're talking about energy efficiencies, we're talking about green hydrogen, we're talking about innovation. We're talking about critical minerals to be able to do the energy transitions, and this is a very complex, different. It's different to other countries. Countries have a very clean matrix. However, if we look at the matrix for energy generations, we have great challenges in the sector of transportations. There are great challenges for energy efficiencies. The Caribbean has a great dependency of import on fossil fuel import, and it has a huge fiscal impact, and its implication on the changes of climate change is important. So for each country, we need strategies that are well adapted, and well, that is the great challenge. In order to continue with the discussion, I would like to invite Madam Ambassador for the European Union in Panama, Isabela Matus. I'm sorry, Isabella, if I did not pronounce your name properly. Madam Ambassador performs her task as she works as ambassador for the European Union and head of the delegation in Panama since September 2022. She started her diplomatic trajectory in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland in 2002. And between 2013 and 2017, she became the ambassador for Poland in Peru, but also performing a role in the embassies of Poland and in Argentina and Spain. The Mara ambassadors knows the region very well, and well, the in the office of the Ministry of Warsaw, she has had offices for the Department of the Americas of Economic Cooperations and the Cabinet Ministry. She possesses a Ministry of Economy and Foreign Affairs from the University of HGA's Warsaw School of Economic, and from the Center of Latin American Studies from the University of Varsovia. So I invite Madam Ambassador Isabella, the Ambassador of the European Union in Panama, to please contribute to our discussion. Please, Madam Ambassador. Good afternoon to all of you. I would like to greet our great friend at the Secretary of Energy, Jorge Rivera staff, but also the Subsecretary Rosilena Lindo, that bilaterally we have been working arm in arm to make this transition, this green and just transition here in Panama at a bilateral level. But today my remarks are have a more regional focus than of Panama, because of the event that we are hosting right now. Latin America and the Caribbean is one of the most the regions most affected by climate change in the world, and at the same time we have an extraordinary potential for renewable energy that turns them in one of the regions with the greenest energy mix, and the green quotas for renewable energies for the primary areas in the regions ascended to 33% and 60% of the mix of the electrical mix, and with significant differences in the most advanced countries in that area: Costa Rica, Chile, Uruguay, and others. Of course, we haven't gone through the whole road. 43% of the state emissions for the greenhouse gas emissions come from the energy sector and from the rhythm of exploitation for energy resources is insufficient in comparison to the increasing demand of energy that we're hoping to increase 30% for the decade, and the energy combination intensifies the carbon because of the growing numbers of carbon emissions, the local atmospheric pollution, the interruption of fossil fuels, effects on the pay balance, and vulnerability to the volatility of the prices for fossil fuels. Also, the dependence of the hydroelectric energy is also translated to vulnerabilities related to the impacts on climate change. In the Caribbean, the sector of energy has also been characterized by the challenges presented by the geography and small islands, and the subsequent service for low quality in the supply of electricity, the tariff prices for general electricity that are usually elevated, that are collected to the consumers, as well as the capacity deficiency for the public sector, with the need of a pertinent reform. And here, because of this, we have there's still a lot of work to do. The European Union and the Caribbean is proposing, or is intending to propose, something that will push on the energy mix. It will contribute, and it will help us with socio-economical challenges such as the existing inequalities. This is what we have been asking over and over again: green, but also sustainable, and equally green and social. In that sense, according to a recent study from OLADI, or the Latin American Energy Organization in Latin America, 3 million new work positions in Latin America. To achieve this green energy transition requires a greater collective ambition. This is the reason for which the President von der Leyen proposed to support the objective of triple the world rate of renewable energies prior to COP28 and duplicate the energy efficiency by 2030. As part of the investment agenda Global Gateway for Latin America and the Caribbean that was launched in July during the Business Forum and the US Business Forum, we had 135 key projects where the cooperation and mobilization of investments, among which we have numerous projects related to energy transition. We have set in motion several. The von der Leyen president announced 2 million euros to support the production of renewable hydrogen and the energy resilience in Brazil. So we've also launched a few months ago the Fund for Renewable Hydrogen in Chile with our member states. In this context, the investment agenda Global Gateway for Latin America and the Caribbean is looking to keep on supporting the investments in sustainable energy, transforming life, economies, and at the same time, the planet. Examples of such investments include the expansion of the network of electrical transmission in Argentina and the production of renewable hydrogen in certain countries such as Colombia. I've already mentioned Chile, Uruguay, as well as the development of renewable energies or a renewable system outside of Panama in the on the Nove Bugle region. This agenda is looking to approach the needs of infrastructure in the region, creating a local added value and promoting the growth of employment and social cohesion jointly with the stakeholders in the region. Therefore, it's a political commitment to work together, identifying business opportunities that are green and digital for Latin America and the Caribbean that will benefit of the open environment generated by the trade agreements and investments, and it will help us to achieve the sustainable development objectives or goals. But it's not just the mobilization of investment and capital. We need to work on the private sector. The good news is that the incredible potential for renewable energies potential is translated in a countless number of opportunities for sustainable energies that go from the generation of renewable energy, transmission, distribution, energy efficiency, access to energy, and recently renewable hydrogen. The companies from the European Union already have a strong investment in ALC with in investments such as the generation of renewable energy, energy efficiency, renewable hydrogen, among others. For example, everything regarding renewable energies, over 100 European companies operate throughout the whole value chain, manufacturing, promoters, and public services. The same way, renewable hydrogen has been gaining the attention of the politicians working on this long term in Latin America to produce great volumes of competitive green hydrogen with its abundant renewable energy and its development to a new local and regional market. The development of a capacity of local consumption in ALC is crucial. So in order for this potential and this production to be absorbed and to be put to the service of the energy transition for the region. However, we haven't reached that point yet. Several energy companies, including the European companies, have not developed believable goals for net zero transitions and looking at the frequencies for energy and fossil fuels, we need to invest on that trend and to create a more worthy opportunity or environment. And this is the global gateway for the region. In spite of the myriad of open of opportunities and of sustainable opportunities in the regions, there are several things that keep us from getting this materialized. Such barriers go from political, institutional, bureaucratic, regulatory, of social infrastructure, including cultural. In that front, facing this, European Union is also associated to the countries of ALC to look at the provision of different support instruments, among which we include political dialogue, the provision of technical support, the financial support for risk reduction, and the innovations or the investment for private sector. For example, the National Office for the Energy Commission are negotiating MOUs with partner countries such as Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and Cuba, and is also working with Brazil and Cuba the same way in the framework of the program Euroclimate. So present in this climate week, it's organizes and co-organizes 20 events. During Climate Week, we have established political dialogues with several countries in the regions because the program that we have been working on for over with countries in Latin America has expanded its footprint for countries in the Caribbean, and actually to commemorate the European Day, the EU is launching the Euroclimate program in May of this year, loaded with 136 million euros. This launch is following a ministerial meeting in October of last year in Barbados. Then the Commissioner for the European Union and the ministers of the Caribbean agreed to set a just and green transition between the partnership between the European Union and the Caribbean. And we have been, and this took place in Walker's Reserve forest located that is also a center for regenerate areas, which puts more in evidence the commitments for Euroclimate. The European Union is also providing services of technical assistance for regulation, policies, and governance. It's improving the capacities for public executions and the transference of appropriate experiences for energy transitions for the EU to the partner countries. Well-known assistance is, for example, the Global Mechanism for Technical Assistance. Also, through the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus, in English, UFDC Plus, and they are also procuring support from the private sector. This guarantee has a capacity of 130 million euros to guarantee the operations of these mechanisms along with the private sectors, and thanks to the leveraging effect, this can mobilize over €500 million in investments for the years 2021-2027. So far, we have assigned over 90 million euros to Latin America and the Caribbean for proposals related to energy. We need to keep on working and achieve greater objectives. We have already started the agenda of the Investment Global Gateway for ALC, and we will support the necessary management. But we need the European private sectors, both European and Latin American, to reach our common goals. The companies that SMEs included have a key role to perform, contributing investments, knowledge, developing capacities on the ground, and providing sustainable methods energy efficiency that the European energy is proposing. The world is not doing well to maintain 1.5. As it was well mentioned, to the transition of clean energy, each country has its path based on their national specifications. However, we need a common horizon, an objective to meet collectively. COP28 is a key opportunity for us to transform the growing political pulse regarding the transitions towards a clean energy with those needs. And we are joining the COP presidency to propose a commitments for a transition for a clean energy for COP28 with the purpose of moving forward and getting the word to a 1.5 degrees. So this is what we propose: to triple the installed capacity for renewable energies up to 11 terabytes by 2023. I understand that it's allowed to double the improvement rate for energy efficiency in this decade in comparison to the previous one. When we apply jointly, these objectives are conducive to a progressive eradication of fossil fuels that agrees with the Paris Agreement. This objective is based on the conclusions for the International Energy Agency and the International Energy Agency, IDENAN, corroborated by our own models, and also because of the commitments assumed by many of the governments this year in declarations of the G20 leaders and also in the Versailles declarations this past June. These objectives are not creating a parallel pathway to the negotiated results. They conform the Paris Agreement and everything else related to the weather, forming a positive narrative for the collective actions in terms of clean energy areas. So far, we don't have a global path for a clean energy transition that is in line with 1.5 degrees. That has been supported by the government. That is something we need to change. Those objectives will help us to tip this scale or move the needle where we could highlight even more the role of the renewable energies and energy efficiency in parallel to the progressive reduction of fossil fuels. Chile and Barbados are also already a part of this and are promoting this initiative. There are other Latin American countries that verbally have expressed, but we're still pending their confirmation. And as I've mentioned before, Latin America is considered as the continental region with the greatest renewable mix in the world. And in the majority of the countries, there are lots of programs for renewable energies in the regions. We hope we will find more countries that will support publicly this support. I take this opportunity to invite the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean to join us in this initiative, and any information that you need, the Euroclima team is here to help you. Thank you very much for your attention to this kind of lengthy speech. But since I'm not going to say anything else, once more, thank you very much, and I wish you a wonderful session. Brilliant intervention, and honestly, in summary, we will have to reach carbon neutrality by 2050 if we wish to reach the Paris objectives. And the European Union, as Madam Ambassador has mentioned, is a grand supporter and collaborator of Latin America. They support it not just with this technical systems, but with their with their multilateral banks, loans, concessions, guarantees, and truly to leverage private investments. We enter in my area of passion, which is finance, and essential. And this is essentially the area of risking, of mitigation of risk, transferring the risk from the private sector to the public sector with guaranteed funds, with insurance mechanisms, but also with risk compensation on the public sector. And then very important to leverage private investments and all the work of blended finance, of the combined finances and hybrid finances, working with local institutions. In Latin America, we have the public development banking, and this is key for us to have this because for the second space is going to challenge in new private areas, and the first step this is how we are going to benefit with SMEs, et cetera, et cetera. And that is key. The topic of green hydrogen is essential. The example of Chile is basic of $1 billion has been good and it has been important. And we could see this in the investment, European Union, and more. So now let's continue with this session. We are learning so much, and now let's see. Now let's give the microphone to Nadia Gonzalez, specialist in regional climate change for Latin America, and in the framework agreement for United Nations and climate change. And this is something that has been specialized in transparencies and metrics for greenhouse gas emissions, and there is technical management for areas, and we could see mitigation and adaptation for climate change, and we could see the experience for low carbon projects for the industry, transportation, and energy and renewable energy sectors. And here we have Ms. Nadia. I invite you. You have the microphone to make your contribution. The floor is yours. ¿Me estás escuchando, Brian? Check, check. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Carla Gonzalez, and I am working for the Regional Center for Latin America and the Caribbean. I have a few slides. I don't know if you can hear me. In the first place, I would like to thank the Secretary of Energy of Panama, Madam Energy of the European Union.
Pues me siento muy honrada de compartir el panel el día de hoy. Y pues en primer lugar quisiera compartirles.
And I would like to share with you what are the regional collaboration centers for the different areas in the regions. And right now we have 6 regional centers for collaboration worldwide. And we have a regional center, and we are supporting 40 countries in coordination. So it's not working.
19 países del sur y el este de África. Tenemos el Centro Regional de Colaboración.
We have the Regional Center for Collaboration, and it's working in 26 countries, and with the economic community and also for the Arabic states in Occidental Africa. And we also have in the region of Latin America, where we contemplate 17 countries in the regions, and we have the RCC in the Caribbean that is supporting 17 countries in the region. The working areas for the collaboration centers that have been subscribed to this conventions are 3 in particular, and they are supporting the countries, and they are increasing for the climate section, supporting the increase of goals. Si me paso a español. And we are working here with the different stakeholders. Here we have different support areas, and among them we are working on the areas of mitigation and working with the different constructions at long term and for the capacity strengthening in terms of the application of Article 6 of the region.
Las áreas de adaptación, medios de implementación, transparencia.
We're also working in the areas of adaptation, transparencies, and the integration of the different stakeholders. Here, just to present for the different collaboration areas, is with the different areas, we have certain areas. As I mentioned, we have 17 countries that we're managing. We have the Regional Collaboration Center, was founded in 2013, and now we are in collaboration with PENUMA. And basically what we are doing is that we are accompanying in the recollection of data assessments, capacity building, sensibilizations for the governments, technical support, connection with experts. As I mentioned, we have 6 centers for regional collaboration worldwide. This is just a brief introduction of what are the regional collaboration areas in terms of what are the key elements for the mechanisms, the ambition mechanisms for the Paris Agreement. Well, just to focus on what are some of the key agreements. These are some of the determined activities, and these have been every 5 years. They have been implemented, and these contributions have been framed within the transparency framework reports, where the countries need to have the report of the advancements and for the compliance of the NDCs and of and we need to see our first global balance, and the first one is going to have to be. And this global balance gathers all the preparation and information that the countries have been developing since 2021. And we have made a technical assessment for all of the information and technical advancements and the long-term strategies presented during the convention, and for a final result or for a final analysis to be considered among the results for the global stocktake that we will see during COP28. And here to show you a little bit of the work that we have been doing for the data collection. As I mentioned before, we have 3 steps that have been carried out for the global stocktake. This is a summarized image of, and we can see here the processes for gathering this information, and we do this from the convention, and we start this with the data collection and the process starting with 2021. We do technical evaluation and the collective process and all the mechanisms and presentations to move forward, and the report of the commitments contained in nationally contained, and this is carried out for 2022 and 2023, and the technical dialogue to reach a consensus and be able to reach the reports for the synthesis reports that will allow us to assess this information and to bring a consideration of results in the last information and the recent science available according to the data reported by the conventions. Then, after that, we have the response for the cycles, the ambition cycles, which is to remain under a certain amount of degrees and to increase the resilience in the region and to have the coherent flows for a trajectory for greenhouse gas emissions and rhythm of financing. What is the cycle of emissions? And well, we start with the contributions nationally determined in 2020, and these are the chairmans to present the mitigation components. And these have to be presented and the advances need to be reported by the framework, the reinforced transparency report. And for the first time this year, we will have the global stock take that will indicate the line so we can increase the determined needs. And here to enter in more detail to see what are the mechanisms for account rendition and to reach the objectives for the Paris Agreement. As we have mentioned before, we have certain contributions determined under Article 4 of the Paris Agreement and it has been presented by the biannual reports of transparency by 2024. We are going to present our first biennial transparency report that has been specifically determined. These reports will have a technical review by experts and a facilitating a multilateral process. And lastly, we will cluster the global balance as or the global stock take under Article 14 of the Paris agreements. And among the contributions that are going to be presented in the second cycle for updates have to be in line for the messages of the global stock tape at the end of 2023. This is the most important thing and part of the things that we have to highlight from the next secretariat that we have been said that it's very important to highlight that this global stock take was designed for it to be ready by the end of 2023 and by the beginning of 2024, and the parties can start working on these guidelines that will come out of this global stock take. And the update of these DNSs are based on these key messages that will be given by the global stock take. Here also to show you a little bit that we are also inviting the countries to join us and to continue with carbon long term. And this is the update for the different cycles of update and to continue up to 2030. And we will continue with neutrality and with long-term strategies that are in line working with thermal strategies. Lastly, I would like to tell you that the global stock take or the world balance is going to show us all of the determined contributions. We have different goals regarding the contributions that we have. Some of them are measurable, some of them are political, and we are inviting the region to improve on the different goals so they can be quantitative and also to include the components for adaptation mitigations. And this stock take is not going to be done individually, so we are not going to put anywhere and we're not going to review a specific area and say you're not fulfilling your specific commitments. As I mentioned, this is every 5 years, and we are mentioning this we are just helping them to improve the NDSs and to trying to be as transparent and the presentation of their NSS. And lastly, this will be like the roadmap for the upcoming commitments that are expected to the parties starting 2023 this year. At the end of the year, we will have the key messages for the global stock take for the COP28 in Dubai, and we will have biannual reports for transparency and of the NSS. And by 2024, we will start building the NSS according to the messages for the global stock take. In 2024, we will start the centralizations of this new cycle for the NSS. And lastly, the inclusion and the communications for our communications related to adaptations And if it's not just the communications related to adaptations and their national policies, this will be the 4 steps for the roadmap that will be part of the key reports that we will have after our stock take. That will be everything on my behalf. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nadia. And well, thank you very much for presenting how the Framework Convention for Climate Change works and how can we focus the updates for the NDCs and how can we leverage this for the private investments. I see that we're very short on time, so I would like to thank Mr. Secretary Jorge Rivera for his opening remarks, for Ms. Ambassador Isabella and Ms. Nadia for the presentations. And now we're going to enter in the next session of the event where we are going to discuss barriers and opportunities as well as public policies, financial instruments that are being used in Colombia and Panama for energy transition. The Mr. Minister Omar Andres Camacho Morales, is he with us? Has he arrived? Yes? Oh, perfect. And okay, well, welcome to the Minister Omar Andres, Minister of Energy. I'm going to introduce him, the Minister of Energy and Mines in Colombia. He's an electrical engineer and licensed in physics for the University Francisco Vaz de Caldas. He has a master in energy administration by the Technological of Monterrey, and he has a doctorate in electrical energy from the District University. He was part of the programmatic team of the historical compact that drafted the energy combinations, and he was an integral part of the team and has been working energy after the election of the current president of the country. And he has, since August 2023, he was elected, and in 2014, he obtained the award Fabio Chaparro from the Energy Group in Bogota on the undergrad degree with the topic of the evaluations of the calculations of radial transition lines for energy transition. Welcome, Mr. Minister. Let's start with the questions from the panel, and we will have with you Mr. Secretary Jorge Rivera for Panama. And I would like to start for Mr. Minister Omar Andres, Minister of Mines of Colombia. What are the key challenges and opportunities that your country is facing in energy projection towards a cleaner and sustainable matrix? Please, Mr. Minister. Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Perfectly. Well, thank you very much. First of all, greetings to all organizers and all participants, to the Secretariat of Energy and Environment in Panama, to the Ministry of the Environment of Costa Rica, Euroclima, to the Regional Center for the Commission of the United Nations on Climate Change, to all participants, UNDP. For me, it's a delight to participate in this panel to discuss such an important topic for our region, for the region, as it's the case of energy transitions. And as I know you from our country and from this country, we have we have marked the path of what is going to be a just energy transition, and this will allow us to move forward in something that is very important, and is that to have an articulated government and the compliance of the goals and the international commitments, but also the goals that we have set for us as a government. In that sense, we have built a roadmap for transition during the first period of our government. In the first year, we had the construction of this roadmap, and we have reserved the diagnostics for the energy model for the country and a diagnostic to review the impact for the energy model that we have been applying to our countries in general, but specifically for Colombia. And we have developed the different scenarios for energy transitions for 2030, 2040, 2040, considering, of course, the compliance of the commitments that have been assumed internationally facing climate change, but also with an opportunity to be able to guarantee and accelerate, as we mentioned in the opening stages. We have several commitments, and this is a huge responsibility and a huge challenge. And if we don't act in a decisive and accelerated way in this path, the key challenges we have here, if we have a stronger implementation of the sources for renewable energy in the generation and the changes for energy. Currently, our country hasn't reached not even to a 1% of energy generation of renewable energies, considering hydraulic energies, where here you include, we have an opening. We were talking here about the environmental impacts, and considering the challenges that we have and the accelerated implementation that we have, and we put here a goal of developing during this years of government 6 gigawatts of energy for the country, and that way bringing ourselves closer to the major participations. And we have the challenge of democratizing energy, making sure that the poorest sectors will have, and the most vulnerable citizens in our country might have this. And we have denominated this plan the energy democratization plans, and to have solar roofs, and through this the change and the tariffs of energies for energy rates, so that this doesn't be, so that pricing doesn't become doesn't hinder their access to this. And also the modernization and the management of fossil fuels, and to use to guarantee and the energy security for this just energy transition. And for all of these regulatory challenges, and something fundamental that you have heard is the need to talk about the financing and the cost of transitions. And here our president has spoken and issued a very important challenge that will allow us to leverage all of these projects that will undoubtedly require a decisive action, so that the countries that are committed and working on this path can definitely work on the conquer and in the search of these goals that are important for our countries, but are also important for the world. Hello. Oh, my apologies. Well, thank you, Mr. Minister. Very interesting to see in the roadmap the goals for Colombia's renewables, and the topic of the approach to communities, and even on the topics of financial instruments. And we also know that Colombia is working along with other topics, and it's innovative, and we have regulatory topics, and we are learning a lot, and we need to move forward on the, for a question to our colleague, the Energy Secretary Jorge Rivera of Panama. And in a summary, we would like to learn and listen from you in terms of planning and public policies for energy transition. What are the long-term plans that you have here for Panama, and what type of implementation measures are being implemented and what are being considered for these objectives. And if you are thinking of structuring or if you have any type of financial instruments. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. And first of all, greetings to Omar Andres, Minister Camacho. It's a pleasure to share this panel with you and definitely trying to summarize our proposal for energy transitions that we have proposed for the year 2020 and this year as a response for our commitment and our purpose of carrying out this process. As I was saying for our opening remarks, we are talking about the 4Ds: decarbonization, digitalization, democratization, and decentralization for the energy sector. This, of course, always maintaining the energy policies objectives that we have that are, first of all, make sure that it reaches everyone, and security, and also ensuring sustainability and access. In our particular case, as I was saying, this proposal is based on a long-term plan that was given by the previous administration and the previous government. We put together a vision for the year 2050, and we have to take this into line, and we have put this proposal for this action plan for 2030 for this first stage. This is what the agenda for energy transition is part of the electrical functions and the proposals for the hydrocarbon sectors that have to do a little bit outside of the visibilities that we have, and we need to reincorporate this process. And also a series of cross-cutting access, and among which we have, of course, gender, and we denominate next level energy. And we establish here the national strategies that have been approved by the year 2030 with goals and chronograms and indicators that will allow us to get to follow up and to provide access to energy and electrical mobility and energy efficiencies, destroyed deficiencies, and we're precisely in the side of hydrocarbons. We need to introduce other elements and the conformation of the energy hub we have in Panama, especially linked to the bunkering of the boat of the vessels that go through the canals. And here it's important to have the green hydrogen. And these are the five strategies, or six counting green hydrogen, establishing the cross-cutting access and approximately 30 to 60 goals and 42 specific lines to develop here by the year 2030. This is an action plan to give follow-up, control, monitoring, so we can all comply on the fundamental challenges that we're carrying out, and of course the illegal regulatory adjustments we need to have so we can implement this to the rhythm that is required, for which we have a proposal that is being socialized for the current legislations. And secondly, the most important thing that we have identified is that, and it's a bit invisible, is the engagement of the citizens in the process. And of course, we are supporting a strategy that has to do with sharing what we're doing and focus on the engagement of what we're doing. And when we're talking about citizens, we're talking about the citizens at home and for the small companies, and with small opportunities to move forward in the processes. And when we've done the diagnostics, we have knowledge areas that are the ones that we need more. And if we have the establishment, then the hardest one is the ones that are not here. There are several citizens in this area where we can provide more information, and we can leverage on several initiatives. And we can, if we could have additional questions. and we have a fund for transition. We have a session with something that was approved by the Dutch Assembly, which is our Green Energy Fund, and we established it with lessons learned of what can be done and what cannot be done with a fund that was established a little over 10 years ago and with other multilateral areas in conversation with other areas. Why? Because energy transitions and the estimations that we have in the investment for the upcoming 5 years for $5 billion. And a percentage of those investments is going to come from the private sectors. We don't have large private resources. That's a great issue. So we need to consolidate these enabling conditions for the markets that we have so we can work on this. And lastly, we can reiterate the commitment in Panama. Panama is one of the seven carbon negative countries, and I'm going to sit down and wait so that the rest of the countries fulfill their objectives of 2050 of achieving what they have, and we can contribute on what we're generating and bring the contributions is 0.05% of the emissions. We want to actually show that the example that we are committed and we can have the environmental objectives through the social economic requirements that we have to the creation of 142,000 new employments from now to 2050 with a contribution of $125 million accumulated to our GDP. This is what we're talking about, and 95% of the specific quantitative contributions for the NDCs of Panama are coming from the energy sectors, but not from the sector of electrical generations that we have at 80%. But as you were saying, the challenge of Latin America, which is transportation, here we have that commitment, and here is where we have the strategy of electrical mobility. It makes sense to strengthen the energy security so we can share our climate objectives and vehicles and renewable energy for Panama. Thank you very much, Secretary Jorge. Spectacular for the panel. And I thank you, Secretary Jorge Rivera, and to the Minister Andres Camacho from Colombia. Truly, I need to finalize here in Panama. I'm finalizing with the topic in Colombia. We have certain specific strategies to reach the certain goals, and we have a great challenge of investment of $5 billion, 90% from the private sector. So I am here I am at your service with the country office here to support you here at the UNDP to be able to structure innovative mechanisms. Here we're talking about hybrid financing and the risking and mechanisms for risk and financial policies and debt instruments and public financing, and how to leverage this 90% for the private sector on investment. Here is where we have the financial innovations. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And well, I hope that next year we can present what we have achieved and what we have discussed on the Climate Week. Thank you very much to everyone.